Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana is set to deliver the medium-term budget policy statement in Parliament at 2 p.m. today, providing an update on the country's finances and also how they are being managed. For more on this, let's cross to SABC News reporter Bulelani Phillip, who's in Parliament. Bulelani, good morning. And of course, we just came out of a conversation here in studio with Union Federations. And of course, we want to hear what they have to say. So what's your take there from COSATU, I believe, that you'll be speaking to?
Of course, we will be taking a lot of reactions, both from the Labour Federation, COSATU, as well as political parties. Of course, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana will be delivering this budget, mini-budget, in a short while this afternoon. But of course, he will be doing that in a very difficult conditions as South Africans actually battle with the high cost of living. Joining me now is EFF Treasurer General Nompumelelo. Thank you so much for making time for us. Firstly, as the EFF, what's your expectation for this mini budget?
Greetings to you, Bulelani, and the SABC viewers at home. Look, we're not expecting really much from the minister. But we just want to start off by saying this will be the first budget under the GNU government. The minister, when he tabled his budget back in February, it did not take into account or did not anticipate what will happen in May 2024 provincial and national elections. And we saw out of the outcome of the elections making way for coalition government. So the ANC is in grand coalition with the Democratic Alliance, something that is new at the national level. And therefore it will be interesting to see how the concoction that is making government today will come together and agree on the policy direction the country is taking. So this is the first, and it will be very interesting really to see that, because for the longest time the ANC has been pushing neoliberal policies, which are policies of the DA. So they've always been the advocates of the DA without saying it. So now they're in bed officially with the DA. Let's see what happens. Maybe they will turn around and actually look for policies that will actually assist our people, because 30 years into democracy, we have not seen any improvement in terms of the lives of our people. You said correctly that the standard of living is very high in South Africa, and therefore we expect the minister really to tell us what he's going to do with that. But what is more concerning is that we see today the debt that we have as a country is 4 trillion rand. Back in 1994, when we took over from the apartheid state, the debt was 245 billion. So you will see that in 30 years, it has actually tripled, if not more. And the issue is not necessarily the debt itself, borrowing, but the issue is when you borrow money to pay debt. You ought to borrow money to industrialize so that you can produce, manufacture goods, produce and sell them, so that you can afford to repay back your debt. That's not what the minister is talking about. And he has got no plans. If you look at their Operation Vulindlela program, it's talking about privatization instead of capacitating the state. You want to take from Transnet, which has capacity, but you want to bring private sector to come and operate the trains there. Eskom, the same thing. They are giving money to companies that make transmission lines. But that capacity sits with Eskom. Why are you not capacitating, improving capacity in Eskom? Why are you taking that capacity away from Eskom and giving it to private companies? We've seen the introduction of Green Road at Richards Bay Ports. For what? Because that's the competency that sits with Transnet. So that is all Vulindlela a program that the government...
I'm going to have to just ask you, just maybe the advice that you would give to the finance minister in terms of trying to reduce or cushion the poor from the high cost of living. What advice would you give to him?
The minister must take his budget, create infrastructure, industrialize, and create jobs. People want jobs. There's no economic activity happening currently in the country. Once people have got jobs, they'll have money in their pockets. They'll be able to afford. And then the cost of living will go down. That's as easy as that. For as long as the minister is introducing austerity measures that are aimed at reducing debt, but at the expense of cutting jobs, that will not assist the country.
Thank you so much. Nompumelelo is the EFF Treasurer General. I'm going to bring into this conversation now COSATU's national spokesperson, Matthew Parks. Please, thank you so much for joining us. Firstly, as COSATU, what are your expectations from this mini-budget?
Sure. Look, we're facing an economic crisis. We have 1% GDP growth, which is not enough to reduce unemployment. We have an unemployment crisis of 42.6%. We've got states, departments, municipalities, SOEs struggling to provide the quality services that the economy depends upon. So I hope government doesn't take the normal business as usual approach, doesn't simply say this is a debt crisis. We hope they will shift to say this is a growth crisis, this is a revenue crisis, an unemployment crisis, and a public service delivery crisis. So for us, it's about dealing with the fundamental obstacles to growing the economy, not simply treating it as a bean counting exercise. So we hope Treasury will respond differently than usual, because we can't sustain a country where we have 4 out of 10 South Africans unemployed, 7 out of 10 young people who can't find work. So we really hope we'll see an aggressive, decisive approach to shift things, but we can't continue business as usual.
The GNU will have impact in terms of the policy direction of the country. The DA, probably some of your erstwhile friends, do you think that the government of national unity will be able to lead the country in the direction that will appease the workers?
We needed to, and it doesn't matter really which party a minister comes from, whether they're from EFF Plus on the right, PAC on the left, doesn't really matter. What we need to see is them delivering. So Home Affairs queues doesn't really, we don't care about the colour of the politician t-shirt. We want to see vacancies being filled, we want to see the infrastructure capacity being built, we want to see quality public services being rolled out. But government doesn't have limitless time. Whether it's an ANC-only government, whether it's an ANC-led GNU, doesn't really make a huge difference. People want to see results, and they want to see it quickly. We've been in this economic crisis, the unemployment crisis, for a long time. We have to really see government moving much more aggressively to resolve the issues. And it can be fixed. The real progress government under the ANC has done with regards to load shedding over the past year is commendable. The progress we've seen by government led by the ANC around rebuilding the South African Revenue Service gives us hope that you can fix the state. It just requires putting the resources, filling the vacancies, removing the corrupt criminal elements, some of whom now masquerade as politicians in parliament, and really kind of grow the economy. But we can't be this business as usual approach of Treasury.
But the DA would argue that they want to cut down on the wage bill of government as the workers. How will you respond to those proposals?
So the wage bill is not growing, in fact. Since 2008, it was stable at 35% of the budget for 15 years. In the last 2 years, because of budget cuts, it's decreased to 31%. So it's a myth by politicians say it's out of control. And it's at a normal international average. Always will be a major component of any workplace. If you continue to pay people peanuts, what you'll see is a brain drain. You'll see skilled workers like nurses, teachers, doctors, paramedic, police officers going to better paid jobs in the private sector, which are less stressful, going to the Middle East, to Australia, to Canada. So we should be careful of cutting our nose to spite our face. You have to fill public service vacancies. You've got a capacity at the state because society, the economy, businesses depend upon an efficient Home Affairs, a well-running ESCOM, an efficient transit, metro rail, quality public health care, etc. If we think that this is a bean counting exercise, then we're going to continue on this path of economic stagnation, of high unemployment. But SARS has shown you, if you fill vacancies, the return on investment is massive to society because SARS, by filling that 400 vacancies, has managed to increase tax compliance, which means additional revenue into the state. If you fix ESCOM and transit metro, the economy will grow, bringing the tax revenue the state requires. So we should avoid this approach simply says cut, 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 when you really have a growth and a revenue crisis.
All right, thank you so much. Matthew Parks is COSATU's national spokesperson. I'm going to bring into this conversation now again the chairperson of the Finance Committee, Joe Maswanganye. Thank you so much for making time for us. Firstly, as the Finance Committee, you will obviously be seized with the issue of processing the budgets. As a Finance Committee, your advice to the Minister, we're talking about high cost of living that is affecting poor South Africans.
Thanks very much to the viewers out there. You'll remember that the ANC had an NEC over the weekend. And top on the agenda was the issue of the cost of living. We have decided as the ANC that the matter of the cost of living should be attended to. The basket of zero-rated goods should be expanded. And to a certain extent, looking at children's clothing, which are quite very expensive. So the matter of cost of living must be seriously attended to. The Competition Commission must make sure that retailers do not hike prices to be unaffordable.
We talk about debt. Government debt is still a worrying issue. The government, service costs, debt service costs are very high. How would you advise the minister to actually curb that space?
We have agreed with the minister before as a standing committee on finance that he should design debt reduction strategy, take it to cabinet so that cabinet take a decision that this is how they are going to contain debt. As much as they've got that strategy, they must make sure that they don't cut expenditure on a social sector, education. There's no country that can develop without developing skills or human resource development. So we are quite aware that debt servicing cost is growing at a high speed. But we should also acknowledge that for more than 200 days, we never had a load shedding, which is good for the economy because now we don't have disruption of the supply of electricity. There is improvement in the logistics and transport sector. And the recent reduction of the 25 basis point for the interest rate came as a relief because our people are owing a lot to the banks. And we believe that the next time the MPC of the Reserve Bank meet, they will also consider another reduction so that people have more money in their pockets.
Now, would you support this review of the administered prices, particularly for fuel as well as electricity?
It's a matter that, if you remember, I think it's 2 years, if not 3 years back, right here in Parliament, then Minister, the late Dr. Tito Mboweni, talked about this issue, that there has to be a bilateral between National Treasury and the Department of Energy. So it was supposed to be the discussion between the two ministries to look at this matter. Also, let's acknowledge that a week or so ago, the price of fuel has gone down, which is bringing a relief to the motorists and to the transport users, because commuters are complaining that the cost of transport takes almost 40% of their income. But also the fact that the Department of Transport through PRASA and Transnet have brought back a lot of trains into the rail has brought a relief to the commuters, because railway is quite cheaper compared to buses and taxis. So there's a lot of good positive developments. And according to the projections, because we attended the monetary policy review policy meeting 2 weeks back with the Reserve Bank, at the end of this year, towards 2026, growth can go as far as 1.8. And if growth can begin to be positive, it will have an impact on employment.
Thank you so much. Joe Maswanganyi is the chairperson of the Finance Committee. We will, of course, be bringing you rolling coverage and taking some political reactions here at the Imbizo Center in Parliament ahead of the mini budget this afternoon. On that note, we'll cross back to you in studio.
Well, thanks, Bulelani Phillip, inside Parliament. So let's take you outside. That's where Nompumelelo Siziba is for more on Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana's medium-term budget policy statement set to be delivered this afternoon. Nompu?
Thanks very much. Well, we're in the much calmer environment of the marquee where the mid-term budget speech is going to be taking place. Currently empty, of course, but in due course, the seats here will be filling up ahead of Enoch Godongwana delivering the much-anticipated medium-term budget. It's interesting that this structure is quite big, but even as we speak right now, you can hear that the structure is being buffeted by the continued winds outside. You can hear the steel steel structures making lots of noises, but I'm sure it's quite a tough and tenacious setup, which won't blow away during proceedings. But of course, as you know, we are anticipating this midterm budget, and there's a lot that is expected to be spoken about. Not so much on the tax front, that is more something that is spoken about for the main budget, which will take place in February next year. But of course, Mr. Godongwana might give us a hint of how much revenue they're looking to raise over the medium term and from where. But we know that the economy has been under pressure. We're beginning to see the beginnings of some possibilities of growth, you know, with the improvements in the energy sector. Focus now being turned to Transnet, which needs a lot of help. Whilst it's raised some capital, it does say that it needs about 100 billion rand to be able to address its issues, and it's only raised about 23 billion rand so far. And of course, it has a guarantee that it got from government, so it's not something that they can totally rely on. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. As we've discussed with our guests in the past, lots of things that are expected around the area of the social wage. Is more money going to be provided for education and health? What is the minister going to say around the NHI? When can we expect that to be instituted? We know that there's a lot of contestation around that particular policy, although the government, President Ramaphosa, says that is definitely going ahead. So, of course, we will be in conversation with analysts as the day progresses.